Okay, so what we want to do today is kind of continue our discussion here of movies. I think maybe we can get through them today. I'm not quite sure. We'll see. We'll get really close. So what we had been looking at was this idea of the theaters. And in essence, how they had basically splits for box office revenue. So let's kind of continue along on that idea where we're looking at, in essence, this idea of capacity and constraint. In the industry. So we've got our average length of playing time. Right, I'm going to call that T. This isn't even really good. This is blue. We got our number of shows per day. Make sure I'm on. Our number of shows per day. Oh, there's no trash can there. There's no trash can in any room in these buildings. Have you noticed that? We're going to call that N. We've got the average number of seats. Per screen. We're going to call this guy A. We've got our number of screens. We're going to call this guy S, and we have our average ticket price. Which we're going to call P. Okay? So we can see here that a revenue for our movies, P times N times A times S. All right? And you'll note here that really N is really a function of T. All right? So the number of showings per day is really a function of time, right? If the movies are 3 hours long, then there's a whole movie that you can't get all those showings in. So we have our revenue here is in essence the price we can charge. Our average ticket price times the number of shows per day times the average number of seats that are in each screen times the number of screens. Right? So let's just assume, for example, that price is equal to 6, N is equal to 4, A is equal to 300, and S here is equal to 500. Right? So we've got 500 screens within our industry. We have 300 seats in each screen. That's a big theater. We have 4 showings per day, and we're charging $6. Okay. So if we do all this, we can see that you can collect about $3.6 million per day, or about 25.2 million per week. Right? Now, obviously, you're not going to get that, right? You're not going to get every single seat sold. You're not going to have these number of showings can change, right? So for the U.S. here, we've got screens of around 37,000. Let's assume the rest of these basically are still that average. The reason that you have this price here at 6 is because you have a whole bunch of screens, like you have a lot of dollar theaters and stuff that are charged $2 or $1 or whatever. That brings down the average. Despite the fact that you've got other theaters that might charge $10 or $15. All right. Same thing here for like our N's and our A's. Right. Some of those movie theaters might be really, really small. Other ones might be quite large. So you've got, in essence, when you include all this in here, for the U.S. as a whole, you have a theoretical yearly revenue of approximately $99 billion, right? I mean, that is in essence, you can think of this as that's what they could be making if they were selling all of the screens, all of the seats in the theaters, showing 4 movies a day at a price of $6 for all these different screens. But their real numbers are in the 8 to 10 billion range in revenue. Interestingly enough, I mean, basically what this guy says is that you've got capacity at approximately 10%. Think about what that says in terms of JQH Arena, right? So let's assume they've got 20,000 seats, they're only going to sell 2,000. That's what that says. Or the Dallas Cowboys can seat 100,000 people, and they can seat 100,000 people. They can seat a small city, but they know consistently they will only sell 10,000 seats. All right? Ford builds plants to make 1 million cars a year when they know they're only going to sell 100,000 cars a year. Those are the types of things that you have within this type of industry. I mean, you are running at a capacity of around 10%, right? That's kind of interesting. And if you look at the numbers here, that's 3. You can kind of see that this industry has been having some issues here. So this kind of top line here that's kind of going up is, this is box office. This is personal consumption expenditures on movies. And so you can see this guy right here, this darker line, this is in nominal. These are in current dollars. These are in real dollars, right? And you can see here, basically after about 58, 48, something like that, I mean, it's essentially been relatively constant. It's essentially been doing that. And it's continued to do that, right? This is relatively flat change, not a whole lot of change in this industry in terms of how much people are spending. So you had this peak kind of occur here basically in, it looks like 45, 46, 48, something like that. And it has been going downhill, right, in real dollars ever since, and then kind of basically just kind of flattened out. Let's see, we're done with that. So let's look at some of the factors that are shaping the industry today. You have several different factors that are shaping the industry today. one of these guys is technology. So this is the filmmaking process. And you can have things like The Matrix, Titanic, Superman, latest Star Wars movie, right? I mean, when you got to the end of, say, Rogue One, who's at the end of Rogue One? Leia, looking the way that she did in 1977. She's dead. And even though she wasn't dead when they were filming that part, she didn't look that way, right? I mean, it's not like they CGI'd her, and they CGI'd a whole bunch of the other people too. If you guys have watched the one from, like I can't remember all of the people's names, but the guy in charge of the Death Star, that guy was CGI. There were several of the rebel leaders. If you go back and you look at the 1977 movies, you will see them. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people in there that were CGI. So you have this filmmaking process that makes it possible to make all kinds of things that didn't used to be possible a long time ago. All right? So, I mean, it's not only in the production of movies, but it's in their distribution as well. Right? I mean, so for example, you've got DVDs, VHS, and streaming, right? I mean, these are both complements and substitutes in a way, kind of basically at the exact same time. I mean, they can either increase revenue or they can decrease revenue. Depends upon how you want to calculate revenue. If you're thinking in the old model of just box office and box office alone, VHS, DVD, and streaming are going to make box office do what? Go down. But it's not just box office that we're interested in, it's in the whole stream of income. Box office plus all of this other stuff. And that can actually complement revenue. Yes? Depends on their contract and what existed in 1977. So do you think people saw that coming in 1977? I'm certain her estate and her wanted something. How much they got, I don't know. I'm betting not much. When you read these contracts, I mean, these things state, I mean, all kinds of times, they're always stating stuff like, anytime the future such and such, in this or any other known universe, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they use that type of language all the time. You can have all kinds of also other things that are like forecasting techniques. For predicting revenue, right? I mean, this allows you to know very, very quickly if a film is going to be worth it or not. It lets you have an idea of what you should be doing. I mean, should you be putting more money into this or should you be putting less money into this? So for example, here we can see revenues and the return on movies, and we have several different factors up here. We've got our we've got revenues on this side, we've got rate of return in this second column here. And so we've got things like our budget, right? And what we're saying is that, oh, okay, well, the budget's important in terms of revenue. And you can see here these numbers that are in parentheses. These are, in essence, the T statistics, right? And so we have an award, right? Well, does the thing win an Academy Award? Everyone's always interested in Academy Awards, Academy Awards, Academy Awards. But if you look on here, the number's actually negative, right? It's not statistically significant. But basically what that says is that, hey, if this thing wins an Academy Award, it has absolutely nothing to do with revenue, right? So for example, you've got the movie that just came out with Michael Keaton, the founder, where he's playing the McDonald's guy. And they wanted to release that closer to the end of the year because that's when you have all the Oscar buzz. That's when people are doing the voting and the movie's more fresh in people's minds. And they're saying, oh, people are more likely to move it into an Oscar of some sort. But they figured, they actually did some forecasting and hired some economists, and the economists said, look, I mean, your chances of getting an Academy Award on this are pretty small. Just go ahead and release it now and get the revenue now, right? You've got other things like how many unknown actors are there? Next was whether the cast member participated in a top grossing film, right? Then you have these ratings here, G, PG, PG-13, and R. Right? Is this thing a sequel? When has this thing been released, right? Because there is a lot of seasonable variability, and I'll try to print this off for you guys and bring it next time. But you can see there's a lot of seasonal variability on when people are showing up. So for example, here we can see, here's January, here's December. You've got Christmas here, July 4th through Labor Day. So here's your midsummer peak, Easter, Washington, pre-summer low, Memorial Day, right? So Memorial Day to Labor Day here is when you have your big chunk of movies. You have this plateau here. Right now is the time that people are not going to the movies as much as possible. Thanksgiving, and then you've got Christmas, right? Which makes sense if you remember that somebody that was old in the movie industry is somebody over the age of 25. That means the people that are basically going to the movies are lots of teenagers and young people. And when can teenagers and young people go to the movies? During the summer, because that's when they're not in school and when they're not working. And then, of course, you have these peaks here on the holidays, on Christmas and Thanksgiving, when people are home and people have the day off and they want to go see movies and stuff like that, right? And so you have a lot of variability here in terms of how much revenue you're going to collect depends upon what else is out there at the time, when the movie is being released. All right? And in fact, if we look at this, and not just this one, right? If we look at these admission cycles, we can see here that to a degree in the industry, CONTRACYCLICA, it's contracyclical. So if we have a recession, basically here's our GDP, right? Here's our time. Here's GDP. We know what's happening through here, right? We got a recession. Essentially what this says, it doesn't go exactly against the cycle. It doesn't go exactly with the cycle. It kind of goes against it at first and then goes with it towards the end, right? So if you were to look at admissions, generally speaking, during this recession, during time T1 up here to say I'll call this T3, admissions would have basically be doing this. And then they would start to come down. Because during this time period, all the way up here to say T2, so from T1 to T2, you can actually see admissions actually increase when GDP is going down, unemployment's going up, etc. Why do you think that is? If GDP is doing this, you know unemployment's going up, employment's going down, and you actually see people going to the movies more. They got a lot of free time on their hands. They just lost their job. How much does it cost to go to the movies? It's really not that much, 10, 15 bucks, right? And so you're like, crap, I lost my job, I don't have anything to do, I'm depressed, I need to get my mind off of this, I'm going to go see a movie. If the recession lasts long enough, then you'll start to see this coming down as people start to cut back on things. But generally speaking, it kind of moves against the way the economy works initially, and then actually kind of starts to follow it. It's the same thing with the types of movies. During recessions, do you know what types of movies are really, really popular? You'd think it'd be comedy. It's horror. Horror movies are very, very popular during recessions. And I don't know if it's because the economy sucks, my life is horrible. Oh, I'm going to go watch a movie about a 17-year-old girl who goes out to the barn in the rainstorm in her t-shirt and panties because she hears a strange noise. And you got to think to yourself, that girl's dumb. What's she doing? Then of course the axe murderer's out there. Blah blah blah. We all know what goes on. Oh, look at that. At least I'm not that dumb. If that's what it is, or whatever, I don't know. All right. But in essence, you have this kind of counter-cyclical, this contra-cyclical way, the way that these things run within these particular different types of cycles, and why certain types of movies are more popular at some times than other times. Right. And you also have this, like we said, the seasonality component to it as well. So people can know with these types of forecasting techniques when these movies are coming out, how much are they likely to make, all right? So for example here, if you look at just box office, so for example, if you had, say, weekly box office here, and you said, okay, we're going to do this on the basis of holidays and summers, you would come up with some figures that kind of look like this. Right, so we have some dummy variables here for holidays and summers. Oh, is the movie being released in the summer? Yes. Oh, is it being released on a holiday? Yes. Right. And of course, if you guys have had econometrics, you know that in essence what these numbers say is that these numbers tell you, okay, here's what we can predict box office is going to be. In other words, if the movie is released, take this movie X, release it on any given week, we'll expect 157.42 weekly box office. Weekly box office increases by 80 million on the holidays. In the summers, it increases by 34 million. Right? But people know this, right? There's endogeneity built within this. Right? Endogeneity means that you know that this data is related to other data. Right? In other words, for something to be statistically valid, the data has to be random. It's not random when people are releasing stuff. No texting in class, please. So if it's not random, then the data is endogenous. Right? So when we correct for this endogeneity, we have something that kind of looks like this. Right? We can use all of these types of techniques to correct for this. We can use the econometric techniques and we can use economics to understand things like price elasticities. So for example, what we see here is that the price of the movie tickets themselves are inelastic. What does that mean? Yeah, if we increase price 10%, we're not going to get 10% fewer people coming. We'll get 3% fewer people coming. Which means, what should you be doing in terms of price? Raising price. Why don't they raise price? Exactly. The price of the movie tickets themselves are inelastic, but the package itself, you're not selling the movie tickets, you're selling the tickets plus the concessions. So even though the tickets themselves are priced inelastic, the package, which of course is what's important, is not priced inelastic. And that's what's important. You've also got other things in terms of capital and money. All right, here I'm using capital in the accounting and financial sense, not in the economic sense. You have a lot of financial innovation. In financing and distribution. Right. In essence, what you have here is you have a bunch of oligopolies. These are the studios dealing with, in essence, the unions. These are the actors and directors. And then you've got the ancillary services, which tend to be monopolistically competitive. And all of these things set up all kinds of interesting problems. So for example, a whole lot of movies are financed by German companies. Why do you think that is? Companies in Germany will finance movies. Yeah.
What's the last A word? I'm sorry.
Ancillary. Why would German companies finance movies? In essence, what you will do is you'll have a company in Germany buy the rights to a movie, lease it back, and then the studio will exercise its option to buy back the rights. I mean, this happens a lot. I'm the studio, I've got the rights to make Superman. A company in Germany says, we want that They send me money. I send them the rights. They buy the rights. They lease me the rights back. So I give them money back again. And then later on, I exercise the option to rebuy the rights and I give them money. There's a whole lot of money moving back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. There's only one reason that's going to happen. What is that? Is that complicated? I haven't even gotten into the real specifics of it. This is the 30,000 feet picture, because the specifics are very, very complicated. There's only one reason that's going to occur. What is it? Taxes. Right? This helps taxes in Germany, because taxes are so high in Germany, and their tax code allows people to have a tax shelter They put their money into the tax shelter. The tax shelter creates a fictional company. It's not fictional, it's a real company, but the company doesn't do anything. The company takes the money over here to the studio. Now the company has an immediate 100% drawdown on their taxable income. They lease the rights. They get paid for that, and then in essence, they buy the rights back, right? This company loses money. The company loses money. But the income and the dividends are taxed at different rates in Germany, just like they are here, right? And so you can face a marginal tax rate, depending upon where you live, in Germany as high as 90%. So in essence, what you could do is you could invest $1 million in this. Your taxable income goes down by $1 million. Your tax bill goes down by $900,000. They do all this rigmarole. The company has this money that they paid, I'm making up a number, $50,000. They had a loss of $50,000. They'll pay you back your $950,000 as dividend income, and you pay a lower tax rate on that, right? You would have been out the $50,000 anyway. You see what I'm saying? All you did was just move money around just to avoid the taxes. And the exact same thing that happens for the studios happens for the actors. Oak Productions Incorporated. This is a company. Who do you think owns this company? You can actually look it up on Google. This company is owned by a guy by the name of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And when you hire Arnold Schwarzenegger to do a film, you don't pay Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the S-A-S-C-H-W. Blah, blah, blah. There. I wrote it out. You don't hire Arnold Schwarzenegger. That costs too much money, right? Because the tax rate in the U.S., the highest rate in the U.S. is 39.6%. That's federal. In California, I think the rate goes as high as 13%. There's California, and then I'm sure LA's got another tax on top of that. I don't know what it is. Let's say it's 2%. So this is essentially 40, 53, there's 55. Okay, Arnold, we want you to be in this movie. Here's $20 million. That sounds great. I'm going to spend 55%. I lose half of that in taxes. I did $20 million worth of work. I get less than $10 million. That sucks. That doesn't sound like a very good deal. So what you do is you don't contract with Arnold Schwarzenegger himself. You contract with Oak Productions Incorporated. You pay the $20 million to Oak Productions Incorporated. Arnold works for free, quote unquote. They have $20 million. He gets dividend income, and dividend income is taxed at 15% within the U.S. And so now, rather than paying 55% of this $20 million in taxes, you only pay 15%. of the $20 million in taxes. And do you think he is the only actor that has thought of this? No, they have all done it. Tom Hanks has his own production company, right? All of the Hollywood elite. George Clooney has his own production company. Matt Damon has his own production company, right? Every single time that you see these guys and they're earning these big paychecks, they're not earning the paychecks and paying it. You can't say to yourself, well, at least they're paying half their income in taxes, because they're not doing that. You are, in essence, the money is in essence going to these types of companies. And those types of companies are paying them out to these actors and actresses in the forms of dividends, right? And Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's a fascinating fellow here. I mean, let's look at what some of his contracts did when we're talking about how this stuff is financed. So he was in Terminator 3. His contract was 33 pages long and had 21 different drafts. Okay? He got $29.5 million pay or play fee. Basically, it's kind of like a signing bonus. Here's $30 million bucks, whether you guys decide to put me in the movie or not. Right? He got a $3 million signing bonus once he actually signed. He got $1.6 million for every week over 19 weeks of shooting. So in essence, he says, okay, I'm going to set aside 19 weeks of my life to shoot. If you guys go over that, every single week that you go over, I get another $1.5 million. Right? This is what I meant earlier when I said the director is really, he's really trying to keep everything on schedule, right? Because if they're out shooting in LA and there's rain and they can't have rain, it has to be at that spot, and the rain delays shooting for 2 weeks, they are way behind schedule and they can go way over budget very, very quickly. He had a perk package of $1.5 million. And this included a private jet, a fully equipped trailer with a gym, 3-bedroom deluxe suite on location, round-the-clock limo service, and personal bodyguards. And he got 20% of gross receipts in every market in the world. Now, we've already talked about gross and net, right? So here you are, you're the net player, right? You are the guy that had 2 lines. Oh man, I sure do hope the movie makes a lot of money. I can get some royalties. Maybe I can buy myself another cheeseburger. And here's the movie, right? It cost whatever it cost. I'm making up a number here, $100 million. It goes someplace else. Now they show the movie in Somalia. And in Somalia, it makes $20 million. But 20% of that goes to Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? So it's $4 million. So here's our $100 million in cost, our $100 million in revenue. Oh, look at that. The movie broke even. Yay, everything with the $20 million in Somalia now is gross profit. I can finally make some money. It's a net, right? Nope. Cost just went up another $4 million bucks. Right? Or we can look at the Gone in 60 Seconds. Right? I remember I promised you a while back to look at that one and how that financing works. So here we've got a movie that cost $103.3 million to make. Has box office of $242 million. Buena Vista, which is the distributor, or the studio, $102 million. Right? The movie theaters themselves, the Carmike's and AMC and all that, get basically $140 million. You got your distributor here. They got a 30% fee. Nicolas Cage and the director, Bruckheimer, they got $3.5 million each. Now the movie's $95 million in the red. It has $200 million in DVD sales. Only 40 million goes to the studio. All right, because they have a contract in here on a 20% royalty. So you've got 160 million going to Disney's home entertainment division. Disney's home entertainment division and Buena Vista are the same company. I mean, they are, but they aren't. Here's the studio that's making it. 200 million in DVD sales, 40 million goes to this studio, which is owned by Disney. 160 million goes to this division, which is the home entertainment division, which is a completely separate division. Cage and Bruckheimer here got 5% of gross. You've got the pay TV channels. They pay $20 million for the channel to show the movie. You've got Disney takes about $3 million for residuals, that's royalties. They've got monies for insurance and everything else that they're reducing out. The studio is charging 10% interest for overhead. So here's this movie that cost, literally, by the time it was all said and done, the movie's in the can, $103.3 million. Here's the $103.3 million we spent paying the person to come and give lunch to the crew. Here's the $103.3 million that we spent on salaries. Here's the $103.3 we spent on the electric bill. The movie has made $500 million. And it's still in the red. Why? Because we have all kinds of financial innovation within the industry. Okay, we'll pick it up from here. We didn't quite get done with movies. That's okay.